Good morning, everyone. My name is John Monahan. I'm the president and CEO for Convergent Technologies Group. Just want to say thank you for joining us this morning with Hewlett Packard Enterprise to see an overview of the HP Private Cloud AI. Just want to give a little overview about Convergent Technologies Group. CTG is a veteran-owned organization that recently celebrated our 20th anniversary, something we're very proud of. We've got here by building long-lasting relationships and partnerships with our clients. As an exclusive HPE Platinum partner, we strive on excellence in our certifications. Our engineers carry the highest level of certifications HPE offers. The benefits to organizations that partner with Convergent is we handle the opportunity from start to finish, from the business need discussion to building solutions, integration, installation, and the migration. As a client, you have a dedicated CTG team that we assign that never changes. That's from the solution architect to your account manager to pre-sales, post-sales. It's a true partnership, and that's how Convergent started 20 years ago. You have your opportunity to purchase from anyone and bring solutions in to evaluate. And we decided to be the best in the industry, you had to be very specific with the vendors that you kind of go to market with. One of the benefits of CTG is that we do have a full product lab that's compute, storage, virtualization, backup, DR, networking, and security that allows you to have the opportunity to actually work with your SAs that are assigned, see those solutions and things like that before you ever, decide to purchase. It's that true belief, kick the tires before you buy. Um, but having that ability to test the solution before you purchase to me is what I think a VAR value added reseller really can bring to the table. Then once we work together and we do a project, we don't just walk away. The team's always there. We build that relationship because we want to be an extension of your IT team, and we're always going to be there to support you. I have only one ask is, after the presentation, our teams will follow up. Like to get feedback from you on how you felt the demonstration went and do any more deep dive technical one-on-ones. But I'll turn this over to Eric now with HPE, who's going to be giving you an overview and then the technical demo. Thank you very much for joining us today. Eric?
So thank you for that introduction, and thank you to CTG for hosting us today. My name is Eric Lauder. I am a solutions architect with HPE. So working with our partner here, I would be called to do things like this, to share what it is HPE is doing for in the space of AI and help them establish a path for implementing our solutions. I focus on one called Private Cloud for AI, and I have a whole marketing slide deck that I can go through that'll lay out the industry and why AI and all these other things, but I'm not going to do all of that. I'm going to shortcut it and actually introduce our solution. And through it, conversationally, if you will, I'll bring up kind of why we've done what we've done. But I am going to go ahead now and share it out, and then kind of it's going to feel like I'm starting in the middle, but I promise you I'm not, because I'm bringing you right to where things are. Because what I want to do is spend the back half of the morning, if you will, showing you what private cloud for AI is. And every once in a while, you'll hear me use the expression PC AI. I will oftentimes correct myself and use the whole term private cloud for AI. But ultimately, what you're looking at is a turnkey AI factory. It is everything that from the NVIDIA chips to the memory, CPU, GPU, storage, and networking to make all of this work. So we're taking away all the complexity of the decision making for introducing AI into on-prem or even co-load environments. So I'm going to go ahead and share out my first the first overview here, and what we should see is basically, I'm going to start right here, skipping all the introductions on who HPE is, who NVIDIA is, and all these things, and bring you right to why you're on the call today, which is to talk about private cloud for AI. This is a solution that's probably about 18 months old. That was introduced to the market with NVIDIA side by side with us to say companies that are deploying artificial intelligence have a really big problem, and that problem is deciding what to get and when to get it. And what we've done is we've gone to market with something that from out of the box that you can turn on and be productive with artificial intelligence, with AI, in a matter of in a matter of hours, actually. But I was on a call this morning where we were talking to a customer on basically on November 3rd. By November 7th, they had the equipment installed, and on the later on that weekend, they were actually finding value inside of their AI solution. So this is something that deploys quickly, and it's integrated, but it runs out of the box. We've also learned over the last few months that scale is important because we like to start in a form factor that gets everybody excited about the solution without overextending, without spending tens of millions of dollars on a solution that may or may not be the answer. Instead, you can start in a small 30-person style environment to get value in AI and then grow it for an enterprise. And we have since enabled our solutions to go ahead and let you kind of add a GPU, add infrastructure to it, all while not interrupting the workflows and the data flows that you have. So we have this idea that you can start with just eight GPUs, scale to 16, scale to 64, add another 64 as you go through it. So you're working through those types of things. But because we are this concept of a turnkey private cloud production AI concept, this private cloud for AI, is you're now kind of eliminating this idea of silos of both data and infrastructure, where you have different organizations that might jump into AI at different junction points and then build an infrastructure and run it separately. Instead, you can control how all of this information is actually being kind of onboarded that way. So this is the kind of the introduction to it. So what I've hinted at this idea of being co-developed or shoulder to shoulder with NVIDIA, that this was something that is delivered to the market with NVIDIA at the forefront. It was something where our device, our rack, if you will, ships with NVIDIA software installed on it. It's licensed for NVIDIA Enterprise, so you don't have to go out and get separate access to resources provided by NVIDIA. These are models, these are NIMs, these are things that kind of make this idea of generative AI and model building and things like that what popularized it. So it's all right there. But we also have a control plane from HPE that gives you all the resources in management that you need for making sure that the system is doing what you acquired it for, that workloads are being provisioned properly, that user controls and access are there, that the complexity of Kubernetes and virtualization technologies, that they're all built into the solution. So you don't have to go out and resource those from separate vendors, so that we have those pieces there. And we also have a software layer, which I'll get into in a minute, called HPE Essentials. It's AI Essentials that ties together very popular open source solutions with integrated logins and pieces that kind of give you a workflow all tied together so users aren't jumping out of interfaces in order to access a Jupyter notebook for design and coding, if you will. So those are all there, and I'll get into those pieces in just a couple of minutes. But optimized hardware, NVIDIA GPUs and switches, HPE GreenLake file for storage, which can be object store and file, and those types of things are there for us. So as we go ahead, the AI Essentials, these are the pieces of software that kind of build up our technology. Okay, without a solution like AI Essentials or even private cloud for AI, what we saw were teams were taking weeks and months to just kind of get together on an idea on what is it that we need to acquire in order to build a solution. So built on top of our GreenLink offering in our virtualization and Kubernetes components, we have a set of data connectors, and these data connectors tie in information that crosses this idea of data lake houses, HDFS, things of that nature. We have these data connections that are exposed and are available, so we can plug in our Jupyter notebooks. We can plug in our, when we go ahead and build a retrieval augmentation or RAG instance, we can use some drag and drop ideas to just point it at data and tell it where our embedding is going to be. So we're wired into all those pieces. Then a set of data engineering tools. I've mentioned Notebook a couple of times, but we also tie into Airflow and then an open source business intelligence tool called Superset. These are designed in our workspaces, and they're available on installation and delivery. Then some data analytics tools, Presto, Apache Spark, and Libby, which used to live in our big data world, are now kind of carved out and available for us to run on instances of containers, so we can let a system learn and intelligently deploy these jobs for what used to be machine learning, if you will, but they give us access to SQL like queries and work through that. Our data science tools integrated Kubeflow, MLflow, Feast, Ray, and machine learning inferencing services, which is was something that it was a little bit more abstract in our older versions, but we've elevated it in a way that lets you go ahead and instrument and deploy models from third parties that will let you kind of wire in the registries on where they live. If they're not on-prem, but they're in a cloud-based resource, you can go ahead and plug in a set of credentials and access these models. Because, close to 2 years ago when we were talking about this, we were locked down. We deployed only 3 models, and that was about it. That's what you got. But now, using MLS and MLIS and other tools, you can go ahead and bring on additional Hugging Face models and things that are out there and are pretty much learning faster than we are. So you can go ahead and bring those in and access those pieces. And that brings us to that next idea, that you can bring in your own tools. So AI Essentials, or private cloud for AI, lives in a space that we accept that models are intense. To build, design, and deploy fundamental models, that takes a lot of compute and a lot of horsepower. Private cloud for AI lives in the next arena, which is the model is nearly complete. Now might need inferencing, it might need fine tuning, but the model is there. And what we want to do now is do retrieval augmentation. We want to do generative AI. We want to do agentic AI. These are the components that the model is done. Now we're going to go ahead and tell something to do something with the model. So if you're familiar with that idea of agentic AI, One of the best examples today is if you've seen the Matthew McConaughey ads with Salesforce, right? He's someone who's sitting at a restaurant when it's raining outside and he's brought the wrong meal. Well, if a set of agents had organized that dinner for Mr. McConaughey, it would have known it's about to rain. He doesn't like fish, and his friend is eating at the restaurant next door, right? So an agent would have been interpreting all the changes that are happening and make that happen. So when you think about your use cases on, well, what does agentic mean to me? That's one kind of commercialization of agentic, where agentic fits in a more realistic or an IT-centric world is agents are the ones that are determining the health of systems and the next thing to do with that system. Is this system experiencing an outage or a disk failure, or is there something interrupting a data flow? And what do I do with it? Agents are then told to either communicate with someone via notification and messaging or do the task, right? So the modern agents are the ones that are doing the tasks. And even HPE has built our next generation GreenLake solutions on that concept of agentic curing and healing and things like that. But what I mention it in this context because you may roll out a solution, which I'll show you in a demonstration in a minute, that didn't ship with this with private cloud for AI, but instead gives a workspace that you can go ahead and design agent workflows. And I like to kind of walk through those things, but I bring it up under the bring your own tools idea. So built through this whole system, and I've mentioned it a couple times, is the idea of GreenLake with built-in observability and enterprise security with zero trust authentication and things of that nature. Those are all wired into how private cloud for AI will run and perform for you. So we have our curated model catalog. So those are the pieces that I'd mentioned. Like I said, 2 years ago, 18 months ago, it was exactly three models. Now it's a little bit more than that. Blueprints and applications. We used to ship with this quick start concept, and it was wired to like a retrieval augmentation, knowledge base type of thing. But now you can actually go out to NVIDIA's website and pull down a set of blueprints, follow 4 or 5 simple instructions for how to modify the YAML file or the Helm chart rather, with how that's going to deploy on the system, plugging in a couple of API credentials, and then install it in a wizard-based function. And now that blueprint is now going to be available for your team in resources to use. So those are all part of our AI Essentials pieces. So I've mentioned a couple of things on what private cloud AI can do across just some simplified use cases. I mentioned a chatbot, right? Today, it's more appropriate to call them virtual assistants. These are things that you can ask questions of against your corporate data and get those types of things to come back and respond for call center type of behaviors, or even online resources for your customers that they can talk to a chatbot and have it answer specific questions to your businesses. Code generation is another one that is popping up. I've worked with companies that had to they used to run a lot of AWS resources and wanted to bring some of the code on-prem, and they used code generation pieces to kind of reverse engineer what AWS was providing to them, and it gave them the insight to go ahead and build code to onboard resources on site instead of spending a lot of money to migrate. They were able to shortcut both cost and time to bring things on prem. So that's just one way to use code generation to develop work code that way. Automation, I hinted at before, this task and workflow automation, those are that idea of agentic, AI-driven event and incident management. So you can do those pieces across an industry. It works very, very well in IT. And like I said, HPE has gone all in on agent-driven events and control within our GreenLake world. And then content and production, product creation, that's a lot of fun to play inside of using generative AI to analyze documents and come up with white papers and things of that nature. I've seen people use generative AI to set for training, where they will go ahead and plug in a set of documents to it and then allow end users to go ahead and take quizzes and prompts on making sure that they are learning corporate resources the right way. So that's one of the things that you'll see with that. Industry applications, we know, this slide feels like it's 10 years old already, even though it's really only been around for 7 or 8 months. And it is understanding the industry that you are in and looking at, is there something that competitively that I need to do on-prem, or is there something product wise I can take advantage of AI and ultimately build a better product, interact with my customers in a better way, or save money somewhere, right? Those are really where everything kind of comes down to it. And private cloud for AI, especially when we use the new chipset for the RTX Pros, the generation of those chips in computer vision is amazing. So much so that NVIDIA realized that that chip is outperforming anything that they thought it would. And it's taking off. So we've gone ahead, as I bring up the next set of slides to talk about kind of where things live, we've gone ahead and made it so our entire portfolio can support those RTX chips. And I'll get into a slide in a minute on those. But I'm going to build out this slide because it goes ahead and kind of lays out again these use cases and workloads, right? Virtual assistants, text to speech and speech to text is actually a pretty important use case, especially with the idea of accessibility. When you present something on your website, how is it that an end user is going to interact with that information? And text to speech and having an engine can take a prompt and then read it back to someone, it's finding a lot of value out there on that end world for how that is something that these machines can sound human, they can interact with people. So that is an important thing. And then speech to text is another, let's reverse it, where you actually have someone who is on a call with someone, but they have a device that they need to read the response because they're not hearing. That is something that is very valuable there. Chatbots with retrieval augmentation, that is something that is probably was our first and most popular approach to workloads. And this is something using foundational language models. You can use small models. You can use custom models to go ahead and build a retrieval augmentation piece. And then AI vision. This is something that I think is, like I'd mentioned before, with the RTX Pro 6000s, the AI vision and medical imaging and what we'll call digital twins, right? This idea that I used to think of a digital twin, as a copy, a replica of something, until someone walked me through their factory floor. They took they took a LiDAR component, like basically you can walk around with your iPhone, right? And you can create this LiDAR image of your factory floor. But you take that, you process that through an AI vision, and now you can put on a headset and be in that resource. You can take and figure out, is this table too high, or is this workbench in the wrong place for a set of users? And you can move it around inside of a digital twin without actually having to lay it out on a factory floor, bolt it down, and pay people to come back and move it around, right? So that's one of the ideas of a digital twin. And then obviously our facial recognition concepts and things like that we've known about those at least in sci-fi for the last 50 years, but they are real now, and it's very, very exciting. So that's just kind of a repeat across the use cases that I had mentioned before. Our ecosystem of partners, not just our trade partners like CTG, but integrators, folks that are building and designing AI solutions are coming to HPE and landing inside of our accelerator programs to get their wares in front of folks like you. And these are tools that ultimately you can use and consume. And I had talked a moment ago about accessibility with speech to text and text to speech. I'm going to call out DeepGram, and you see their logo right there. They're a business that is set up exactly for that. So their tools can sit inside of our PCAI, our private cloud for AI, as a framework, and you can go ahead and build, design, and develop code and software specifically with the DeepGram integrations that way. So that's one that I call out only, mostly because I worked with them 2 days ago, so they're kind of top of mind. But that's this is an example of our solution partners. There are more, but this is the ones that made our slide for today. And then we also have some financial services components. Our Accenture and Deloitte are partners that you can take private cloud for AI and know that their solutions will run for those types of things. Now, what I like to call out about financial services is both of those vendors focus in an area where hallucination costs billions of dollars. If you go ahead and you ask one of their solutions something and chat decide or the AI decides to make something up, that's a very wrong answer. Even though, if we go to our online chat engines, it's, oh, okay, let me just ask it again, see what I get. But the answers need to be consistent and they need to be right. And their agents and their solutions make sure that you can do those types of things. And I know that businesses now run their financial systems on Zora and the AI refinery, and they're not concerned with it. So just that's one of the things that those vendors right there have focused on making sure that that their data is right, accurate, and true. So what is private cloud for AI? Well, this is it. You're looking at it, right? It is, we have a developer system, and that's the description of it. A couple of N100 NVL GPUs, 32 terabytes of integrated storage. You plug these, basically it's like a 3U, right? You see it's a 2U system and a 1 on top. You plug that into your rack and you've got AI. That's how simple it is. But from there, we move into our family of solutions where they are rack based. So the small, as I mentioned, that RTX Pro 6000, it can be expanded from 4 to 8, but it has integrated storage. It has integrated networking. You basically provide us an uplink and plug us in, right? That's how these things deploy quickly. Now, I'm also going to call out the fact that you see the RTX Pro 6000 sits there in that small environment. Well, I've had folks say, well, Eric, I need that in the largest that you have. And we've gone ahead and our product teams have come back and said, fine. It is now available or will be within the next probably couple of months that you can get any one of these form factors with the RTX Pro 600, and then you can get a small with the H200, right? So you can go ahead now and based on your workloads, on what it is that you're doing, you can go ahead and get these pieces wired together. And I call out that RTX Pro 6000, not that I'm in love with it or own it myself, but I want to say that if your use case is computer vision, whether it's analyzing medical images, it's analyzing security images, it's analyzing traffic, it's analyzing something that is a visual context, the RTX Pro 6000 is what you're going to get. The H200s can handle it, but they're designed a little different, right? They're more on that fast data component pieces. So this is where we're at. And what is important is this federated architecture concept. Remember, I had mentioned when we came out to market, if you bought one, you were stuck with one. You bought that H200 system, you couldn't get and wire in at the time it was the L40s, right? It was before the RTX Pros. But you could not get these systems to, without complexity, to actually communicate with each other and share AI workloads and decide where the process was going to run. But with our federated architecture concepts now, you can go ahead and buy one. You can expand by adding another using an expansion rack. You can also go ahead and say, well, I'm not going to buy a large this time. I'm going to put a medium on, or I'm going to buy a small, and I'm going to put that in place. And now you can go ahead and bring all these together. The only one that you can't kind of mix and match is that developer solution, which is designed for a quick turnaround that you can go ahead and put that in place 3 days from now and be running AI 3 days and 2 hours from now, right? That's where those ones work for us. So, all right. So this particular slide has some audio with it, but the advantages, the benefits of it, lower TCO and across a do-it-yourself, and a hugely measurable difference when you go out into the cloud. Okay, so these are all details that folks at CTG can share with you and go into detail with you, or we can have a separate conversation. Like there are metrics that basically change your approach to how you can go ahead and take advantage of private cloud for AI and recognize value almost immediately. But these are true numbers, and it's something that it's pretty big, validated by a third party. So I am going to stop here, and I know we're not set up for interactive unless there's someone watching a chat and things are going on there. But I've hit my bottom of the hour, and I am going to bring up. I'm going to stop sharing and bring up a live demo environment. So just give me a moment while I transition. All right. All right. So I'll give that a minute to draw for everybody. And now we're pretty much looking at that last the screenshot of the last slide that I'd had up. So the value that I'm going to kind of walk through here is we took away all the complexity of the do-it-yourself. And we absolutely took away everything that is complex about doing it in a cloud. If you haven't tried it in a cloud, I'm not going to lay down a gauntlet and say, go ahead and do it or try it. But you've got to know a lot. You got to know where all the connectors are. You've got to know how to deploy resources and then make them available for your end users and connect to your data and do a whole bunch of things. Where private cloud for AI is integrated tool sets that data scientists use and data engineers use, and it took me a long time to learn that there was a difference, as I say that through gritted teeth. But private cloud for AI is built on a solution that HPE has been selling for probably about 4 or 5 years now. But it was such a natural fit into this concept of AI, and it made NVIDIA very, very excited because we had container specialization. We knew how to containerize certain units of work, and they came to us and they asked us to help them with their NIMs and some of their things that they had a problem kind of bringing into a containerized world instead of a virtualization world, right? So there's a difference in how all those pieces kind of come together. But we're looking at our user interface for private cloud for AI. This is a kind of a workbench where you'll come in and you'll see kind of the state of things. And I'm logged in as an administrative user, so I see a couple of extra things here, but I can also see what's consuming resources in my environment, what's been allocated to them and what they're consuming. So this is kind of a place where folks would start. But there oftentimes what we'll see is folks might jump in and go and access a notebook. So here's an area where now I'm being logged into an environment that is running my notebook server and serving up the notebook to me. And it's taken a moment, but there it is. So here now I can go ahead and jump off onto my resources for where, if I come into shared, I can drill down and see what my demo environments are and bring up a notebook and then fire off any of the work that I need to in the notebook. So I've got a workflow of accessing code and working through those pieces. Let me see if I can find I don't know if we have oh, here they are, the tutorials. So I can jump down into the tutorials, bring up a data engineering tutorial, airflow, and then do I have a model here? So I got my YAML files. Oh, let me come back. So these are the data engineering. So I can go ahead and I can start to walk through kind of the TensorFlow. So this is interestingly enough, this is an old kind of you saw me kind of navigate through a tutorial. So I could walk through and go through each one of these steps in this notebook and deploy the assets to run it and just kind of walk through this Python notebook. But it's one of the areas where now I didn't have to go and fire up a Kubeflow separately. I didn't have to access a notebook. You didn't even see me log in as I was coming in and working through some of these things. So I can work in here and I can do my kind of coding and engineering right through notebook. If I needed to, I could deploy a new notebook. So firing this off, I can click through a workflow and actually, if you notice, integrated, bringing up Kubeflow. It's not a foreign or a net new product for us. It's one that everybody knows how to use. But I can now choose a Jupyter Notebook Lab or build one in Visual Studio, give it a name, the amount of GPU or CPU I want. If I'm going to give it a GPU, I can assign that. I can attach it to data volume so I can bring it to an existing space. But this is an interface that lets me populate and bring up a new notebook, all from inside of PCAI for us. I'm going to close that workflow out, go now into this Gen AI icon here and take a look. I can now navigate through my model catalogs, my model endpoints. I can build a new knowledge base, or I can go into a playground of existing knowledge bases. But it's building out a knowledge base that is actually a workflow that it's kind of important to be able to recognize and do kind of your first touch. So here I am going to go through kind of this wizard-based idea of building a knowledge base. This is like building a custom chat for a company, right? So my application details, I can select a model, and I have a couple of models that are actually running now. But if I click on deploy new, I have a list of available models, and internally we've marked them do not delete because I'm in a shared resource, and we do demonstrations that can be destructive sometimes. So these are hinted at, hey, these are our foundation pieces, don't delete it. I'm going to choose the Llama 3.17 billion as my model. I'm going to leave a default name there. The next thing would be to decide how do you want it to scale. Because of resources I'm on, I'm just going to do a fixed resource. So it's going to deploy only one instance of it. I'm going to click on next. The next step is to select either a data source or upload files. So if I have files already stored on the system, I can select the data source. If I have an object store area, I can use that, or traditional data models. I'm going to go ahead and click on shared. I'm going to navigate down into here, and let me see if I have, we'll do the KB new. I think, yeah. So there's a data set in there for me to use. It's one file. It's not that big, but it's enough for me to show you that if that had hundreds of files or thousands of files, that information would then be joined into this embedding model. So if you guys are familiar with how kind of chat works, and I'll give you a quick overview for those that might not know what happens. You have your first language model component, that thing that decides what information uh, is going to look like and how to interact with it. That's that idea of a language model, right? It understands pretty much uh, how humans interpret letters. Okay, but the next step is to take your data and embed it someplace. An embedded model is typically a vectorized database. So the information isn't in rows and columns. It isn't in rows, rather. It's in columns, and those columns have vectors in them. So there's an embedder that oftentimes, we'll use this one for the model embedder here. I'm going to choose that, and then I'm going, you know what? I'm not going to choose an existing one. I'm going to select a different one. I'm going to deploy a new one. I'm going to click on deploy new, and we're going to do the minstrel. And I'm going to tell it to use that and also scale at 1 because I'm not, I'm a user of 1 here. I'm going to click on next. I can give it any tags or any additional naming, and I'm going to click on next, and I'm going to click on submit. And what did I do? Oh, it didn't like one of the databases. Sorry, we'll go back. Click on edit. It was the instruct database here. So we will, nope, not that one. No, that was okay. Sorry, it was this one. We'll just use the existing one, and we'll next it. All right, so that's going to deploy for us. We'll cancel that wizard. I'm not going to fight it with the naming. I know what my issue with that, but the idea is that deploys. Apologies for that, and deploys into this idea of a playground. So now you end up with a knowledge base that you can then go ahead and ask questions of. So here I now have a deployed chat engine. So PCAI, Private Cloud for AI, has the components needed to go ahead and start where most people will begin their day online, right? Asking chat something, asking Gemini something, asking Pilot something, right? These are public facing interfaces. And Pilot, Microsoft has a really cool engine that you can tie into your corporate world and make sure that it's not kind of reaching outside your internet or your network, if you will. But PCAI gives us a foundation to go ahead and wire things together and make available to end users. So I would be able to publish these endpoints. And these endpoints live in what is a model registry location. So if I come into model endpoints, I can go ahead and take these pieces and push them out through web interfaces to make them available for users. So each one of these is a running kind of a running database. But where this actually lives, if you remember, I mentioned this idea of MLIS. The MLIS is an interface that lives within Private Cloud for AI that gives us a place to go ahead and have custom models, either customized models or models that exist in new registries. So our packaged models, as I mentioned, we used to only have 3 when we would ship, but now we have a few more, right? So we will ship with these, but you can then go ahead and go to a registry, create a model registry, and choose where you're going to start pulling models from. So here's NVIDIA, here's Hugging Face, here's Open LLM. So you can plug in this information, give it a token as you would have access to that, plug it in, and then do a create registry. And then once you have that registry, like here's that Hugging Face registry that we already have, you'd be able to go ahead and pull models out of that. And then once those models are there, you can then go ahead and build a knowledge base off of them, or you can go ahead and build a some other retrieval augmentation component. But one place where these live is this idea of I mentioned a. Do you see these? where it says imported next to these. A couple of them don't, like Array, Kubeflow, MLIS, and MLflow. But we see OpenWeb UI says imported. Traffic report demo says imported. Now I'm going to do a demo in there in a minute. But let me show you OpenWeb UI is an imported framework. It's imported, and we went ahead and we grabbed a Helm chart for it, and we plugged it in, and we made it available to this interface. And how we did that was we clicked on Import Framework. We gave it a name. We gave it a location, whether or not we wanted it to be under data analytics, data science, or engineering. And remember, I joked earlier that for a long time I never separated them, but it's important to separate your data scientists from your data engineers. And then you basically point this system to a framework chart, a Helm chart. You plug in values, and then you click on import. And then after a couple of minutes, sometimes because it had to retrieve assets from the web. Other times it had to go ahead and authenticate against an internal registry server. It'll go ahead and populate and bring that framework into the environment in a way that then makes it available right here within our import tools and frameworks. And one of the ones that I do like to go to is Langflow. And Langflow is basically it's a web interface, and you have to forgive me, this because it's imported, it doesn't have my credentials here. Go ahead and log in. Okay, cool. So this is an interface that lets me build out graphically how I want the workflow for an application to work. And one of the things that is great is there are starter projects, so you can see how these things would lay out. And one of the ones I'm going to go ahead and just kind of click on the sample agent, because this is where, as I mentioned before, if you have APIs and you've gone ahead and you've brought in other models, this is a resource where you can go ahead and populate how you want these pieces to work. So this is an agent where it connects to language models, and you plug in your API key, and then you drag from one file, if you will, to how you want it to behave. In this case, it's going to split text, and then that text is going to be pushed in chunked, if you will, into another database. That database is then going to call an agent, and that agent is going to do some units of work looking for chat input, and then it's basically going to say, hey, this is what I was sent, and how do you want me what do you want me to do with it? So this is an interface where a designer has gone ahead and placed these artifacts on a board, if you will, and then connected them. And then once these pieces are connected, you can go ahead and execute inside of a playground. And that playground is that first look at, well, how did I do, right? Where are my errors? And then if there are no errors, the first thing you're going to get is a chat. Now, I don't think I'm connected to any resources here. So this is what you get. Like I said, you're going to get your first set of errors. And then in this case, I haven't plugged in APIs and worked through that. But that is how you can go ahead and fail fast and get through that first design. Now we actually showcased Langflow, even though it's not our tool, it's an open source tool, at Discover this past summer, and we brought customers through the idea of building a cloud-based agent workflow. I think we were using a travel agent and a customer who had been downgraded from first class to coach and wanted to know what their refund was going to be, right? That was the use case. So we built it. The first lab was building it so it was connecting to cloud resources, pulling in cloud information, and just making sure we can get something working. Then the idea was, okay, now we know our idea works. How can we connect it to some on-site resources. So I want to use on-site data information. So we changed it up a little bit, and it was then using resources like a retrieval augmentation. It was using private information. Then it was, well, now we want to productize it. So we built it in the cloud. We use some private information. Now we want to go ahead and use all on-prem resources. So that became on-prem GPU, on-prem data, on-prem authentication, those types of things. And the lab took everybody through this maturing process until we were finally able to publish an application, all done with private cloud for AI, serving up. First, it was serving up just Langflow, and then eventually we brought it to let's start using some company resources. So we were using the GPU and everything that was on that equipment, if you will. So, and that was all done inside of these pieces. So Langflow, again, this is a tool that if I go to my frameworks page, was imported, right? And what I did is right after that, right after Discover, I went back to our engineering team and said, please start shipping Langflow as one of our integrated solutions. So I believe now that our current iteration, that is, you don't see the word imported next to it. It actually ships with it as an open source tool that way. Okay, so that is there for us. So I've walked through kind of our notebook, our Gen AI, our frameworks. One of the areas that I kind of want to touch on, and I know it's kind of weird to do at last, is this idea of data sources. Well, where is the information coming from that is feeding our models that we go ahead and we write into our notebooks, or we write into our Langflow agents and things of that nature. So there's this idea of connecting to structured data, object store, or data volume. So those are files. And it's as simple as going ahead and clicking add data source and then choosing what type of data it is and creating a connection. So if I go to create Oracle connection, I'd plug in my Oracle information, my authentication strings, and how I want it to behave. Like this enable local snapshot, that's an oversimplification of taking a view and bringing it onto these the local resources. So if I created a local snapshot table, I'm creating a cached view, which accelerates queries, doesn't it? If I go ahead and have something local, in Oracle is living in either another data center, another rack, whatever it's going to be, I'm eliminating performance bottlenecks by bringing it local. So these are options for you to do, but that's just an example there. So I can create connections to these pieces like the data lake or Iceberg. And Iceberg was used for a while before we actually plugged into Snowflake, right? So these are areas where if you've got data in those resources, you can plug them in here. I am going to click on cancel, bring you off to another area for object store. So you can have localized S3 as provided by HPE for file, or HPE object store, right? So you can have those there, or you can bring in a new object store and actually connect to third-party Amazon or MinIO integration pieces, or even our data fabrics S3 components. So you can go ahead and add these. For instance, if I click on add Amazon, right? These are going to be familiar things: the name, the endpoint, our access keys, and the region that it lives in, right? So you can go ahead and plug that information in. I'm going to cancel out of that and wrap up on the data volumes. This is where you saw me a few minutes ago inside of my shared data. So this is private. This is a piece of file storage carved off for me as my user folder, kind of a scratch area. But in the shared area, this is where if I was working on an extended team, here's my KB new folder that we knew we had this one file. I'd be able to upload documents in there and fill that up. So when I go ahead and populate my knowledge base, it'll go ahead and work through that. Now, one of the things that I'll mention, I said earlier that a knowledge base has two components: a language model, right? So it can determine what am I looking at, something that's English, am I looking at something that's in another language, whatever it's going to be. That literally is a language model, how to interact with data. The embedded database is instrumented in a way that once it's wired together, if I continue to add information into this repository right in this location, it's going to go ahead and fill my embedded database with it. It's going to go back and look at that and bring it in so my queries are accurate and my queries are right. Okay, so that's how all those pieces will come together for us that way. So I'm going to go ahead and just kind of bring us to kind of a little bit of a closure on the interface that is private cloud for AI as a workbench where all of this information, all of these tools are brought together for us, and it's where we ultimately can do our work. Right. We saw the MLIS, that interface is where my models are going to be, where I'm going to populate either Hugging Face or NVIDIA models or OpenAI models or even Meta, right? If you're pulling information from there and make it available to your users that way. And we have a concept of having private workspaces, if you will. So I can go ahead and have a set of users that belong to a that should have access to only certain sets of resources, and I can bring that and make those users kind of integrate their work, so their delivery and everything that they're doing is living in one place that way. So this is, with about 5 minutes left. Again, I don't know if we're doing any type of Q&A or folks are putting in questions, but I will go ahead and stop here and bring back the team so we can kind of bring us to our end.
David, do you see any list of questions from attendees that we might want to address?
No, sir.
Well, Eric, I can't thank you enough. I think that was a great presentation. I hope everyone who attended saw some value to HP solution for private cloud AI. We'll do some follow-up after the presentation today to see if there's further interest where we can go a little bit deeper than what Eric showed for us today. But I can't thank you enough for taking time out of your day to attend our session. We have many more technical sessions that will be coming out. But again, thank you very much, and thank you, Eric, for your time and HPE.
And thank you for having us. It is a lot of fun. Thank you.
Everyone, so there'll be some follow-ups. You'll probably be contacted by one of our field engagement teams to see if there's anything that we could dive deeper in. And again, thank you for your time and your efforts today. I hope everyone has a great remainder of the week.